Another struggle veteran, Rev Frank Chikane, joins us on the line to reflect on the life of Mlangeni. Thank you so much for your time tonight. And Tate Chikane, what is the gap, the void that Andrew Mlangeni leaves behind?
You know, in my view, Comrade Andrew Mlangeni is not really leaving a gap. He has left us a legacy, and that it is us who have to take on that legacy and make sure that there are no gaps in our understanding of our struggle, the country, the future, and what we want for this country. And so, in my opinion, it is for us to actually make sure that we take the legacy, close the gaps, and make sure that we do what he actually sacrificed his life for and achieve the objectives that he had set himself.
And when we look at that legacy, then many people have talked about his integrity, his honesty, and just his passion for people. And when you look at the governing party, the movement that he was committed to his entire life, you certainly have to question whether some in the organization actually know or understand the meaning of those words.
I am convinced that they understand it. They actually have learned from these veterans, and what they are doing is actually just ignoring what we learned from these veterans and go astray. And I think it is critical for us, now that he has left us, those who are remaining, to make sure that this legacy does not get lost. There are people within his organization who are so committed to wrecking the organization for their own self-interest. And I think them and say enough is enough, we're not going to allow this to go on. And those who are involved in criminal activities must pay for their criminal activities and must not pull down, you know, like the Samson story, pull down the pillars so that, you know, the whole building fall on top of us. If they go to jail, they should go to jail, but they should not take us along.
It seems to have been something that has developed where corruption is widely recognized in the governing party as being wrong, and that there are people within the organization that are being accused of wrongdoing, and that also has been widely accepted. But there doesn't seem to be much consequence management, what you're talking about, that there aren't any repercussions for people's actions. How do you begin to change that? Because people like Tate Mlangeni were very vocal about that. He's been quite vocal about some of the ills in the governing party. Somebody like yourself has also been quite vocal about it, but that doesn't seem to fundamentally be changing the status quo.
Yes, you would be aware, ma'am. The point is, those who want to wreck the organization have got an extensive, well-calculated strategy of a pushback against any action that actually deals with the rot in the organization. That's why, in my view, we need the members of the organization to take a stand. If they don't do that, then the organization will go down with them. And so it is in the interests of the members to make sure that the rot is taken out of the system, but it is also in the interest of the people of South Africa. So this organization represents the people of South Africa in a big way, and it is the people of South Africa who should say, you can't continue the way you are continuing. And this is what Baba Mlangeni said to us and left us with that commitment.
When you look at the kind of role that he played within the ANC, and you'd know better of how he was relied on to especially come in and mediate, especially where the party was facing difficult conversations or even conflicts that it had to work through.
Yeah, there was, I didn't hear that, repeat.
So my question was around his role as somebody that was relied on as a mediator who would advise and help resolve some of the issues, especially the difficult issues in the organization.
Rev Mlangeni did his best. I mean, he was part of the veterans group and stalwarts. We made representation to the leadership of the organization. They know where he stands. And he also was the leader of the Integrity Committee. And if you check history, you'll see that he submitted reports which were not acted upon. And I think that should be the disappointment in the mind of Rev Mlangeni as he left us. I think it is for those of us who are alive to make sure that what he stood for is taken forward and that we make sure that this country becomes what they struggled for and made sacrifices for.
Cathy Chikane, where would that confidence come from? Because as you're saying, some of those recommendations were ignored while he was with us, while he was still able to publicly speak on these issues. So where does the confidence that even in his death, the legacy which he said to leave behind will be carried on by those who are within the organization, especially those that you've described as being part of a pushback campaign and that, quite frankly, don't want to bear any consequences or repercussions for their actions?
Ma'am, I must say, and this is my personal view, that it is the responsibility of those who are committed to what Baba Mlangeni fought for to make sure that this stops. If they don't do it, which means they get overwhelmed by the pushback, then the organization will be destroyed. It will not exist. And therefore, it must be then the people of South Africa who take a stand and say, this is the type of organization we want the party. If you're not going to achieve those objectives, then you are not representing us. And I think it is clear there's no policy within the African National Congress that supports corruption, that says you should not act against people who are corrupt, but it is those who are corrupt who are making sure that there is no action. And I think it's important to clean up the state instruments so that we can actually make sure that corrupt people don't go away with what they are doing. I think it's a responsibility of those of us who are alive. We cannot leave it as it is. I'm confident that the members will not allow it to go on. If they fail, I'm confident that the people of South Africa will not allow it.
What will you miss the most about Ndade Mlangeni?
Repeat?
What will you miss the most about him?
I mean, Baba Mlangeni will tell you the truth, but with a very gentle heart. Remember that although we did not know him as a younger generation, I worked with Mama Mlangeni and the daughter in the South African Council of Churches when I was General Secretary. So I got to know him through them until they were released. And once they were released, it was a pleasure to work with him. I mean, the real moment for me I will never forget. It's when we talked to him together with the other Rivonia trialists and said, we need to reach out to the leadership of the movement and say, you have gone wrong and you need to change. And Baba Mlangeni was very ready to put his name there. And you'll remember the press conference we had with him, Dennis Goldberg and Kathrada, to take a stand. And I think that's where I really was moved by him.
Struggle veteran Frank Chikane, let me thank you for your time on News at Prime tonight.